episode of The Panel. Tonight's panel is on new assignments. We've got some wonderful guests. Dr. Jeremy Jackson, who is the new director of worship and praise at Brentwood Baptist Church, is not feeling well tonight, so he's not with us. And so our prayers are definitely with him. Jeremy, if you're watching, we hope you feel better very soon. I've got two other wonderful guests with me tonight who you will meet momentarily. My name is Chad Brawley. I am the lead consultant at the Brawley Group. The Brawley Group is a consulting company for churches in the area of worship arts. So any type of worship arts help or support that you need at your church, give us a call, whether that's staffing or working with your team, any kind of coaching, any of that kind of stuff. We work together with churches and pastors to do that. So we invite you to visit our website. The website is thebrawleygroupconsulting.com to learn more. Not going to talk for a whole bunch of time. I'm going to get right to it. Let me introduce the guests. First, we have Mr. Jamie Simon coming to us all the way from Houston, Texas.
What's up, brother?
By way of Chicago. What's up? What's up? What's up?
Man, how are you?
Doing well. And then we have Mr. Christopher J. Watkins here all the way from Houston, Texas as well, by way of St. Louis.
Hey, Dr. Chad. Hey, Jamie, how's it going?
What's up, brother?
All right.
All right. So let's start with you, Chris. Tell the people a little bit about yourself. Just introduce yourself and kind of tell the people a little bit about yourself. Before you do that, let me tell you all where they are. They're both in relatively new assignments. Christopher has been in his assignment for a little while, but he's the minister of music at the wonderful New Faith Baptist Church here in Houston, Texas. And Jamie is the minister of music over at Holman Street Baptist Church here in the city. And so Christopher has been at New Faith. What has it been a year yet?
Yeah, it's been a year and a half. I'm close to
year and a half.
2 years in a minute.
Wow, yeah. Man.
About fast.
Seems like just yesterday. And Jamie, how long do you have? How many months has it been?
Like 3.
About 3 months. 3 months. All right.
New assignment for me.
Real brand new assignment. That's what we're gonna call it. Brand new assignments for you.
Yeah. Yes, indeed.
All right, Christopher, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you are so that people can become acquainted with you.
Very good. As Dr. Chad alluded to, again, my name is Christopher J. Watkins. I'm originally from St. Louis, Missouri, gateway to the West. Born and raised. I'm a third of 4 generation of musicians. My grandmother, my mother, me, then my son, of course. Born and raised in St. Louis my entire life. Originally came from Central Baptist Church, historic Baptist Church in St. Louis. I was there for 10 years. Most people in the church world, if you will, sort of know me more from my songwriting more than anything. I've had the opportunity to write for a number of churches and ministries and artists as well. And God has led me this way. So that's the very, very short version in context of what we're doing here.
All right. Well, he's big time. He's written for a whole bunch of different artists and all that stuff. Go ahead on. We sing some of your music. One of your songs is on my planning sheet for very, very soon.
Oh, wow. All right.
Yeah. Jamie, tell us about Jamie.
Well, listen, I am Jamie Simon. I hail from Chicago, Illinois, as he said. I grew up in Chicago my entire life. Actually grew up in a choir, a children's choir. Some of you may have heard of it. It's called Walt Whitman and the Soul Children of Chicago. Sang with the Soul Children from the time I was 10 years old. And I am still a current member today, alumni member. I literally was singing with a Soul Children group as early as last year, literally. So yeah, spent a large amount of time growing with that group as a child, being groomed by Walt Whitman just to do music ministry. Left there, went to a group called Fortitude. We had a couple albums that we did, 4-man ensemble, and still a part of that group. And after that, had a solo project that I did. Have done one so far, actually 2 so far, and have written for other gospel artists. I'm a songwriter, producer as well. And yes, just started in November at the Holman Street Baptist Church in the great state of Texas, Houston, Texas.
It's funny to me how people who are not from here will say Texas. I'm in Texas. Like, we never say Texas. We always say the city, but you all always call it Texas.
Well, I
So
said
that's
the great state, you know,
yeah.
by way of Houston.
By way of Houston, yeah. We're not gonna skip over that Soul Children piece. The Soul Children shaped gospel music largely during that era, and
Yeah.
I don't know any church choir or group or any type of gospel ensemble that doesn't sing "How Excellent," or should I perfect praise? My bad.
Perfect praise.
Perfect
Indeed.
praise. Perfect
Indeed.
praise.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we just
we
did a
all
version of that Sunday, ironically. So I
Wow.
just put my own little flip on it. But yeah.
Oh, you changed it up a little bit. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, nice.
I did a medley of Jeffrey LaValle's Revelation 19:1.
Oh
Got
yeah.
you.
Changed the keys a couple times and went into the vamp of Perfect Praise.
Yeah. That's a
I love it.
that's a good minister of music. You know, you got to do what you got to do to make it work.
I
Oh, yeah.
love
That's
it.
great.
I
Oh, yeah.
absolutely love it.
Oh yeah.
That's great. That's great. All right, Jamie, let's start with you. Let's talk about your assignment. Tell us a little bit about your current assignment. We all know that you're at Holman Street, but just kind of tell us about what you're doing there and what your assignment consists of in your role.
Okay, good. So came to Holman Street as the director of worship and arts. And what that encompasses is all things music, audio, sound, um, dance, creative arts, anything that is creative arts. I am the director of basically pulling it together from week to week, making sure that all worship and arts is flowing. And then I basically started, like I said, in November. So I'm still real fresh, getting to know all of the creative arts ministries that are there. We've got dancers, we've got mimes, we've got several choirs and several praise teams. And yeah, so I'm really just starting out, freshly getting to know the people. Pastor Murray Martin is the pastor there, great pastor from Houston, Texas. And so, yeah, it is my job to kind of pull it all together, be a coach of sorts for all of those creative arts in the church.
Nice. Chris, tell us about your role over at New Faith and what you do there.
Yes. Just as Jamie, I'm director of worship and arts at the New Faith Church. Again, I've been there for a little over a year and a half now. So as he stated as well, I have a similar role. I oversee all aspects of music and arts at the New Faith Church, which consists of all of our choirs, oversee all of our ensembles, dance, mime, drama, as well as work along with our audio and visual ministry as well as to assist in giving oversight to our worship experiences at a New Faith Church. Yeah, as you know, Chad, as you know, I come from the church itself comes from a legacy music ministry, as I like to call it. Houston, everybody knows the great Ronald Mater. Unfortunately passed some years ago, and Dewan Adamson, who sort of followed, was his mentor or mentee, if you will, sort of following his footsteps. So I sort of stepped into these shoes about a year and a half ago, and definitely have enjoyed the journey. The pastor there is Dr. Andre Lewis. I believe he's going into his 6th or 7th year now at the church. So it's a great season for the church. He's cast vision for us, and it's my responsibility to carry out and fulfill the vision from a music and arts component based upon what he's given vision to the house.
Nice. Will y'all take a moment and kind of, since we're talking about the assignments, you've given us info on your new assignment. Give us a little bit of info on your previous assignment, where you were before now. Jamie, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, the church that I came from prior to this was a church called the Progression Church in Chicago, where I spent about 11 years in the same capacity as director of worship and arts. And the church right before that was a church in Chicago by the name of the Salem Baptist Church of Chicago, where I spent 13 years. Well, at Salem, I did everything from youth minister of music, children's unit minister of music. I served as the head worship leader in the adult church because obviously they're broken in two, three separate churches. I was over the young adult choir. I was there for 13 years, so I did a bunch of stuff there. So yeah, so within that's I'm kind of putting my stuff out there. 13 years at Salem Baptist, 11 years at the Progression Church in Chicago. So that is kind of shows you how long I've been doing this a little bit. But yeah, those are the two previous I just left from.
Yeah, you've been doing it a while, brother. You've been doing it a
Yes,
while.
indeed.
Yes, indeed. Christopher, tell us a little bit about your previous assignment.
Yeah, my previous assignment, as I stated earlier, was at Central Baptist Church in St. Louis, Missouri. I was there for about 10 years. So I was director of worship and arts there, minister of music there. So my role was similar to what I'm doing now. The oldest Baptist church, almost west of the Mississippi. So very historic church. But I was honored to serve there. Love the people, still miss them to this day. But great opportunity for me there to learn and to grow as a music minister there under two great pastors, Dr. Robert Scott, who serves at St. Paul Baptist Church now in Charlotte, North Carolina, and their current pastor, Anthony O'Reilly, who was actually the executive pastor at the Luke Church here in Houston, Texas. So interesting how God sort of worked all that out. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about the interview process. One of the reasons why I wanted to do this particular episode is because I know there are a number of people who are feeling maybe a nudge to make a move in another direction. God may be calling them to. They're discerning what God is doing in their life with regard to another church or another assignment. And then there are some people who are in their new assignments and they just got there. And so I know you all have great wisdom from the entire process. And so we want to share that with people so people can walk with a little bit more information and some confidence with this. So let's talk about the interview process. What was the interview process like from your standpoint? And also maybe share some interviewing tips that you may want to share with individuals who are getting ready to interview or who are in an interview process. Let's go. Let's start with you, Jamie.
Interviewing process was kind of twofold. The first fold of the process was with you, Chad, and the magnificent Brawley Group out of Houston, Texas.
God bless you, D. God bless you.
Yeah, so my first interview was with Chad. Chad and I were talking just about some things and some opportunities, and Chad was kind of letting me know that there were some things that were available, and I knew that that the Lord was kind of shifting me, and so he and I started talking and just trying to see what was available, and so Chad literally and let me set it up. I've known Chad probably since I was about 14, 15 years old, and that's dating us both.
No, you old, brother.
Don't try it. Don't try it. So
Yes, Lord.
that is, yeah, we've known each other for years and years, and so he brought me in and said, well, hey, listen, this is my business. This is my church staffing business, and so let's do it, officially. And so he and I did an interview, which was hilarious, but it was by the book, and we had to do that. And so then after that, he was able to make the connection between me and the pastor. And so the pastor, I think I initially met with the pastor and a couple deacons along with Chad. And I first sent Chad Chad Axel resume. And so the resume process for me was basically just being really, really intentional about talking about the things that I had done in ministry. Of course, some of the things that I've done professionally as well. But I think it's important to be real intentional about the things that you've done so that when people are looking at your resume, they see exactly what it is because they're looking for something specific. And I guess it's like that, in most genres, but in music, it's always good to kind of be specific about what you've done, what your tenure has been, and how you've served. And so I thought I was doing that. I sent the resume to Chad, and he said it was really fancy. I remember him saying. So we laughed about that, and so once we looked at it and started talking to the pastor. And the initial conversation was with them, the pastor, and I believe one or two deacons and Chad, and just kind of introducing myself to the deacons. Ironically, the pastor and I knew each other already. We had history ourselves. And contrary to some belief, some would think that I had some conversation with the pastor initially. I did not. I didn't even know that he was looking to fill that position. Chad knew. And I think in our particular situation, Chad had been working with Holman Street as with, from the Brawley group, trying to facilitate bringing in a person. And several applicants had already gone before me. So I just want to be real clear about that, because people have, assumptions and thoughts. And I want to be real clear about the fact that once I entered into this process, I had never had a conversation with Pastor Martin about it. Chad had only talked to him, and Chad let me know that situation was a situation that was open. And so it was really interesting how God worked it together because I definitely know that it was God, how it all came together. And so once he found out about it, he and I just started talking with the deacons involved. And we did it really, really, really professionally. And it's sometimes when you have a commonality with somebody, it just feels, interesting. And I've known Pastor Martin for a few years. And of course, like I said, I've known Chad for many, many years. And so, we had to do it by the book. And we did. I think we really did, Chad. I think we did our level best to do it as close to the book
So
as we
churchy.
could. Yeah,
Level best.
but I think we did. And we got through it. We met several times. The church wanted to bring me down to kind of sit with the people, be there for a week actually, to see several facets of the ministry on their Bible class and also their rehearsals and their Sunday morning worship. And so I was there for a week, just getting to know the people and just kind of seeing how things were done, and found out that when I was there, that the people were actually, had a ballot, and they were surveying me. I didn't know that, but
Aha.
I did know that. But the great thing about it is that at that particular weekend, I spoke with Pastor Martin, and they let me know that their the findings from their survey were overwhelmingly in my favor. And praise God, it was great. The week that I spent with them was great, and so it went. It took a while to kind of get every piece together. You're laughing. I know you're gonna laugh. But we finally got it working. And like I said, I've been there since the end of October, start of November, and it's been great. It's been great so far. So
Good stuff.
yeah.
Good stuff. Is there anything that you would like to share or a tip that you would give someone who is interviewing at this point somewhere?
I would say do as much research from your perspective on the ministry that you're trying to go to. I had Chad, I obviously had the pastor, but I started doing research on my own, just in Houston and outside of Houston about history and all of that, and just trying to see. The bottom line is when you're making a move like this, you always want to make sure that it's a good fit, not just for you, but also for them. And so both sides should really kind of be digging to kind of see. So if you're looking for a new place or a place for the first time, I think do your research, find out what it is the ministry actually is, what they believe, how they worship, how they do ministry, is very, very key, because in many instances, there could be a ministry that is working and moving a certain way, and this is could be very different to the way that you do ministry, or have ever done ministry before. And so it's always key to find out how they do ministry, what they believe. That's very, very key. Find out what they believe, because obviously we know there are many denominations in Christianity, and unless you are the kind of person that is flexible and able to kind of move through those denominational lines. I grew up in Pentecostal, but for the last 24, 25 years, I've been serving in Baptist churches. So I had to quickly see the differences and the different belief systems and all of those things, and be able to adapt to those things and still be effective. So please make sure you do research on the ministries and what they believe, so that you'll have a pretty good standard and foundation of how you want to, even if you want to be applying at a ministry like that. It just depends.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Chris, tell us
Indeed.
about your interviewing process from your standpoint, and also share some tips for people who may be in an interview process. What you would share?
Yes, I guess somewhat like Jamie, I had a unique situation because I wasn't necessarily looking at the time. If I remember right, actually a friend of the family who just completed master's degree actually reached out to me about applying for the position. I wasn't even aware of it at the time. So I reached out to Chad to just get some insight in regard to the position. So I referred them back, and I believe they applied, and I think maybe a few weeks went by. So I've reached out to Chad and said, hey, have you all filled that position yet? No, I don't think they've quite found what they're looking for. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just sort of left it alone and just kept doing what I was doing. But then somebody said, why don't you apply? I'm like, me? Like, I don't know, because I wasn't really looking to move. I was pretty much overall happy where I was at the time. Remember, I was born and raised in St. Louis, so I really didn't have a strong desire to leave, but if the opportunity presented itself. So I said, sure, why not? So
I was shocked.
Yeah, I'm sure, for a number of reasons.
I was shocked.
A number of reasons. Yeah, because I remember telling my fiance at the time, I was like, I'm not sure how Chad gonna take this, but no, the great thing about Chad and the Brawley Group, like, extremely professional, went through pretty much 3 stages. So met with him, sort of sent my resume. In regards to tips, one good practical thing I believe you can do, especially in this year of 2024 and beyond, just because of technology. First of all, make sure you have your resume professionally done to cater to your strengths. So I always highly recommend that. And also, it may be great to have a great 3 to 5 minute video showcasing your talents and your strengths and your gifts as well. I think having those 2 can definitely help to set you apart, especially when you're going to these, applying for these major ministries at these churches. So those are 2 pieces of advice in regards to applying. But I had a 3-tier process. Met with Chad, then I believe the second process I met with the pastor and the executive director along with Chad. Had a great conversation there. I didn't really think of it as an interview much, as more of just a conversation, which is always good. It's always good to build rapport with people, so you get to know them, they get to know you as well. And I think after that, I came down and spent the weekend at the church, had a chance to work with the music ministry, meet key people, talk with them, had a chance to work with the music ministry, and had worship with them on that Sunday morning. So pretty much did that, got right back on the plane, didn't think nothing else of it. And they called me back within a few days there. So it all happened pretty quickly. So the course of my life happened so quickly there. Just had no idea that a couple of months before then that I would end up in Houston. Texas, well, Texas, as I like to say. Yeah, but no, praise God for the journey, and always be open to what God has for you, because what you think you may want to do and what God has may be two different things. So always be open to what God has for you, and I promise you, what He has for you is always going to be better than what you thought you had for yourself.
Yeah. So a couple of things. One, you mentioned the resume. Uh, that you said it needs to be done professionally. Talk a little bit about that. What do you mean by that?
Yes. So from a practical point of view, because I know that's what people want to know, I can give this spiritual church answer, but I'm not practically. So like me personally, I know how to do my resume, but you want to send it to someone specific who's great at doing resumes in accordance to what you do. I had two resumes. So I had a music resume, if you will, and I also have a secular resume as well. So I had the opportunity to take it to someone who could look over my music career, if you will, my music ministry, if you will, and set up my resume to where it caters to my strengths. It's not this 4 or 5 page who I done played for and all. Just 1 or 2 pages. That's all it's got to be. If you got to do more than that, they're not going to look at that. I promise you. And speaking from experience. So no, but really, and have a couple of people look at it, but have it professionally done. I mean, you're paying somebody to typeset and to set up your resume. And ironically, I do have a good friend who's in the video as well. So I thought it'd be cool to have him do a 3 to 5 minute video showcasing my directing, my playing. Plus, I think I actually had a couple of my songs I've written.
You had a whole production. You had a whole production.
Well, if
it was great.
If you want somebody to be over your production,
that's right.
Worship, so you need them to show what you can do. I thought it was a little bit over the top, but I'm like, hey, I ain't got nothing to lose. So
it was great. It was great. So I think that resume piece is very important, making sure that the resume makes sense, making sure that you don't send a Word document, making sure that you send a PDF, make sure that you adjust the file name. The file name of your resume shouldn't be church resume, or it shouldn't be, my resume for music, things like that. You'd be surprised what people send in. So that's very important, because that gives part of the first impression. And it speaks to an applicant's ability to pay attention to detail and all those kind of things. So that stuff matters. Bro Jamie, you mentioned you mentioned meeting with the deacons. Let's talk about the deacons a little bit, because I know you also mentioned different denominations. Different churches function differently. Some churches are 100% staff run. Some churches, the deacons are heavy. Sometimes the trustees. So do you have any tips as far as how to handle it when the deacons are part of the interview process?
To be honest, I think that you have to just be yourself. You just have to be yourself. You got to meet people, humans. People generally like to be talked to and not talked at. Yes, denominations are what they are. They vary from we know all of them, and yes, there are some ministries that are run by deacons, trustees, like you said, staff led. Well, I grew up in a church that was trustee and deacon led. Church I actually grew up in, my uncle's church, and so I had that's the other thing. I've been in church my entire life, so I was really and am really knowledgeable about how it's run from different aspects, and I've been in the I think I've been in them all. I think I've done the deacon trustee thing, the staff led, the elder led, because I've also been in churches where the elders actually, there was elder rule and in churches. And so the basic element is respect and honesty with people. You talk to them and see how they rule, how they run their ministries, and what's expected of you. And so once you figure out that and what their hierarchy is, and how you play a part in that, and what part you actually play in it, from there I think it's pretty pretty simple once you know what your part is. And like I said, to me, it's really just about respecting everybody's structure, whatever it is, whether it agrees with you, what you're used to or not. If it's the structure of the church, then there has to be a high regard and respect for what it is, because it is their church. And if you're coming to be a part of it, your thought process should be all things respect, all things honor to what it is they're doing.
Great information. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Let's talk about onboarding.
Okay.
And I mean onboarding not so much from top down, but onboarding as far as your entry into the new position, how you had to get in and meet people and connect with people and um, spend time after service talking to people and, finding out who the different players are at the church and, who does this and, give us a little information about that. You start, Chris.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it was a lot of layers to that for me. I think my first conversation, obviously, with Pastor Dr. Lewis. I had time to talk to him a little bit, and Ronald Jackson. Ronald is the executive director at the church, so sort of staff ran. He sort of oversees the day-to-day of the staff and of the team. So obviously talked to them a little bit about just short-term and long-term expectations. And then our director of worship, our worship leader at the church, the great, incomparable Charisma Evans. So I've talked to her, spent some conversation with her. Then actually, I had a phone meeting with the MD at our church, Richard, great longtime musician here in the city. So just a lot of conversations. Had a Zoom meeting while I was still in St. Louis. I moved down with the entire music team by Zoom just to introduce themselves, me introduce myself to them, for they'll know what to expect and not just walk in cold per se. So it was a great way to build rapport. They're great people to work with, very personable, which made it easier for me because not only was I going into a new position, but I'm actually moving into a new city, which was totally different for me. I really only knew a few people down here just through music ministry. Knew Leon, great minister of music over at Wheeler Avenue. I knew Pam Davis over at Fountain of Praise. Obviously, I've known Keith Easton from years through the Dorsey Convention, Michael Pickett, Michael McKay. So I knew everybody just from the music side of things. But as far as personally, outside of that, I really didn't know anyone outside of that. But coming here, it just requires a lot of conversations, a lot of meetings, spend a lot of time listening and learning. That's always my advice. Listen and learn before you speak. That was my goal coming in, not to try just to come in and just change the ship overnight, but to really just to listen, watch, and learn. So that's always my advice, those three things: listen, watch, and learn.
That's good. That's good. Jamie, what you got?
Hey, so I'm still young in this in terms of this ministry. So my onboarding is actually still going on. I'm really fresh into it and still meeting people, still figuring out ministry heads, who runs this, who moves that, who pushes this button, all of those things. And so there were some very specific things that I did in the beginning to get started, because there are some things I needed to do from my perspective, just to start to navigate the waters of the people that are there, and the body of people that are there. So I am literally still meeting people. This past week, met a couple of the precious ladies that were over a couple of ministries. This particular Sunday, we had the pastor's anniversary. This is his third year at the church, and we had his anniversary service this Sunday. And so many of the ministries that were a part of this service, I had not had the chance to meet with yet. So I had interaction with some of them for the first time. They had seen me in service, but I had not known them or seen them, or probably seen them and just didn't know that they were ministry heads. And I'll share this. I met with a particular one of them. for the first time. And I'm not sure through the interaction if they were particularly sure about what my function covered. And so I reached out to them because I found out that they were a part of the program. Well, you guys know, and when you're director of worship and arts, you have to be knowledgeable and informed about things that are happening on the pulpit in the stage area. If you know, for those people that are super deep, we'll just call it the pulpit because it's a stage, but we'll call we'll call it the pulpit area. Our jobs, one of the parts of our jobs is knowing what's happening in that space at all time, and having a direct knowledge about what the flow of worship should be from the pastor, and then us knowing and adapting how to guide that flow. Well, this was an anniversary service, and this particular person that I had met for the first time, I'm not sure if they were completely clear about what my job was. And so I reached out to them because I knew that their hands were touching the service. And so I started talking to them and asked them, "Hey, look, what time are you guys supposed to be there? How many people are involved? Where will you be seated?" There's some specific things I want to do in terms of worship flow. And it wasn't the best conversation from the perspective. Uh, there was a little pull. Yeah, little pull, because I think they kind of was like, well, this is what I want to do. And I've already told my people that this is what they're going to do. And I had to have that conversation and say, oh, okay, good. So I got it. So here's what I'm going to do. Since you've got that in place, why don't we take your people and let's put them here, because that's going to help facilitate a smooth flow and transition for the service. And so they said, well, I've already told them to do it this way. And I said, okay. And I got it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to add to what you said, and we're going to try to move them a bit to the right. You kind of had them to the left. We're just gonna move them to the right a bit, and that way it'll be a smoother transition. Well, I felt a bit of tension. They almost stopped short of saying, "Well, no, I don't want to do it like that." And I just listen again. This was our first interaction, and I was very clear that they weren't 100% sure of how I came into play. Because in their minds, I'm sure they were thinking, well, this ain't music. This isn't music. So you maybe why are you calling me? I don't sing. And the people that are a part of this particular, they don't sing either. And so here's the lesson in that. You have to know, first of all, that every person knows what the function is. I could have gone about that a different way. I could have been real top heavy with that and said, no, we're gonna do this. But no, I was clear that they didn't really get what I was supposed to be doing. So I said, hey, look, let's just, why don't we take what you've put in place? I want to add this to it just for a smooth transition, and let's see how that works. And it did. It worked. They heard me and they were like, okay, great. And so I think what you have to do in the beginning stages when you're on onboarding and getting to know people, you have to make sure that the people that are serving around you, that they know completely what your function is first. If because it's possible they don't know. And I think in this I am assuming that for this particular church, maybe they have not had a director of worship and arts, that the pastor was expecting to do certain things. I believe that this pastor is maybe expecting, has a different expectation than maybe pastor before him. And he and I have talked very specifically about what he wants. And so that's what you have to know. You have to know specifically what the pastor wants, and then you facilitate based on that information. Now, if the people don't know, then you've got to do your best to educate them, and you can do that again without being top heavy. you can just have a conversation. I think that's very important, especially when you're clear that someone doesn't really know. They don't really, if they don't know, they don't know. So I took it as an opportunity, not even to explain it. Well, look, this is what I'm here to do, and I'm supposed to do this. And if you don't, no, I just said, hey, I have an idea. You've got an idea. I have an idea too. Why don't we just kind of take those ideas and combine them so we can flow? And what that did was it kind of pushed that tension away, and we were able to kind of flow. So again, I'm new in the onboarding. I'm still learning people, still being introduced to leaders that I didn't even know. So
Okay. Well, I'm glad that that was handled well and appropriately, and you will be better for it. Believe me, moving forward, moving
indeed,
forward. Let me move and ask a couple of other questions. Now these are questions that I have just been as you've been talking, as both of you have been talking. I've been
yeah.
jotting down a few questions that I've come across.
I
So
saw
these are
your
not.
wheels turning.
You saw my wheels turning. All right.
Uh-oh.
So someone in the comments actually spoke about that this is great information, and this information will help guard against turnover in the church. And so, in
I didn't see
your,
comments. We have comment. We have live comments.
we do. You can. Well, you have to look at Facebook or YouTube.
Oh,
The ones I saw are on in Facebook.
oh my God. Okay, go ahead. I'm turn my computer on. I'm missing everything.
Yeah. So one of the comments was about turnover. What advice would you give um, a new minister of music or worship pastor with regard to guarding against turnover? And I'm not talking about necessarily turnover in the department with other people. I'm talking about turnover in your role, because some people will get to a church and things just don't feel right, or whatever happens in 6 months, they're gone. A year, they're gone. 2 years, they're gone. And most
Right.
pastors want to hire someone who is going to at least give them 5 years, 4 to 5 years at least.
Indeed.
And so that's a major ask, because you have to pick up your life, even if you're moving from one church to another church in the same city.
Yeah.
Changing churches and changing jobs and all that kind of stuff is a major life situation. And so you want to make sure that you're going to be there and not leave in 6 months because something. So Chris, give us a little information to guard against turnover, specifically with this particular seat that you hold.
Yes, and I can probably speak to that. I haven't really done a whole lot of church hopping per se. During the course, I've been to a few ministries, obviously, during the course of my music ministry, but I haven't, been a year here, 6 months here, 2 years
Mhm.
here,
Mhm. That also
well,
looks
yeah,
bad on a resume, by the way.
very true, very true.
So if you
Red
have
flag.
if you've been church hopping, figure out how to make it not look like that. Put some time in something. I don't know, but go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't
Right.
mean to
Oh no,
interrupt.
you're good. You're good. I think a couple of things have to come into play because I think there's a spiritual aspect and there's also a practical aspect as well. And I think Jamie had sort of alluded to it earlier, just in regards to make sure not only is it a good fit for you, but is the ministry or are you a good fit for the ministry? So that's something you really have to take time to discern to make sure it's a good long-term fit for you in that regard. I think having those conversations with key people in the ministry are so important. Building rapport and building relationships is crucial to long-term success. Without doing that, you're going to always run into instances where it's just going to be short-term. Whether you decide that this is not going to work, or they're going to decide for you that it's not going to work. But I think it's really important to build relationships with people, allow them to get to know you, which can be a challenge. Like for me, I'm an extreme introvert. My choir members probably won't believe me, but I mean, so if I really have to take an effort to really build relationships and really get to know people, but you really have to make sure that you are called to that assignment from a spiritual aspect. That's really important. For people in this seat, it's not just a gig. It's not just a job. It's an assignment. It's a calling. Because not only are you're the minister of music, you're a pastor of sorts. You're a psychologist. You're a finance person. You're a referee. you're a coach. I mean, so you're all of those things. So it's important that you bring those aspects to this position, because all those aspects will be needed in order for you to be successful long term.
Yeah, and the pandemic taught us that you also may be a video editor, you may be a camera
Yes.
operator, you may be a sound man, you may have to, you, you know, do other things that are outside of your normal scope of work.
Yes.
So you have to be prepared for that. That is great information that you have shared with us. Um, with regard to the interview process, let's go back to that just for a moment while
Okay.
I have you. Um, I always recommend when people ask me about how to interview or interviewing, I always remind them that you're being interviewed. Yes, you are being interviewed, but it's also important that you interview the church, that you interview the pastor, that you interview the staff. So, talk a little bit about the value in interviewing the church and interviewing the pastor and the staff, because I think that also contributes to longevity. Because you can pick up some green flags and some red flags at the beginning of the process that can help you make a better decision, a more informed decision.
Yes, absolutely, and especially at New Faith Church, and as I alluded to earlier, a music legacy church, as I like to call it. So they had a long-standing tradition there. So even during that process, while they're asking me questions, I probably had more questions for them than they probably had for me. I think it's really important that you have context in regards to why things are the way they are. And I don't say that in a negative context. I say that in a very positive uh, context. Great ministry, great music legacy there, but they've been doing their way for a long time. So now to bring this new guy in who's not only new to the church, but new to the city, so I had to sort of learn how they operate and how they flow and why they do what they do. So I think it's always really important to gain context, ministry, what the philosophy is in ministry. One of the questions I asked Dr. Lewis: what does worship look like? What does worship sound like? What does worship feel like? I think those are great questions to ask. I believe every church has its own unique assignment. And my questions consisted of trying to find out what that assignment was. Was leadership clear in regards to what their vision and direction was for the church? Because if they're not, it's going to be hard for me to cast vision in regards to my role. But they were very clear in regards to what their direction was. Dr. Lewis did an excellent job and still does to this day, because I believe he's going to his 7th year. So he's in a good space to where he's casting vision for the house. So I think it's important that you ask almost just as many questions they ask you. I think Jamie alluded to it. Make sure you do your homework on the church. I know when the church was founded. I know who founded it. I knew how many people was there at that first service. I knew I had context even before we had that first Zoom with the pastor. So I think it's important to do your homework. And the great thing about our community of music ministers, that as big as the circle it is, it's actually really small. I'm probably, everybody's probably one phone number away from contacting anybody in music ministry in the country, literally, just because who we know. So just like they did their homework on me, I did their homework on them too. So I think that's very, very important. So those are great things you can do. Just ask as many questions as possible and do your homework. You'll be surprised where that gets you.
Yeah, I agree with that. I remember once I was involved in an interview, and it wasn't for one of these positions, but it was for something else. And the pastor asked the applicant, "Have you viewed our service? What did you think about our service? What changes would you make?" And the person hadn't viewed the service yet. Instantly, it was kind of like, because it's like you don't take this seriously enough. So you got to do your homework. You got to do your homework. James Simon,
Yes, indeed.
you good? Let's talk about we've been talking about guarding against turnover, but we also just now we're talking about the value of interviewing the church. When you interview the pastor, interview the church. You want to speak a little bit about that?
Interviewing the church?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, well, yeah. And I think I did a little at
You
first.
did.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I spoke with Murray Martin, the pastor, about it, about what, the church looked like, about what the history was, some of the things he had experienced in his 3 years as pastor there. And because it was important to me to figure out, like, is this a fit? Do we fit? And that's what it was. And I don't think it's personal in any way, but you have to do your homework. And so yes, I did it, and in doing the homework that I did, found out several things, and was able to have a conversation with him intelligently, and from an educated path. I said, "Hey, listen, these are some of the things I found out. These are some things that I've heard. Are these things accurate? Does this fit now? Is this old information?" And so he was able to say, "Yeah, that's actually current. That doesn't fit anymore. Yeah, that particular culture we're trying to shift." And so yeah, so we talked, and I did. I was definitely able to. I was able to ask some of the deacons some questions, just about philosophy and view, and the way they view certain things. And yeah, I think that's very important. And I did. I certainly did it. And because again, for me, coming from Chicago to another city, making a move like that, you definitely have to have, as you put it, your interviews as well, because it just works both ways. There's no way to do it effectively without having that go both ways. You could do it one way, but it's probably not going to work in the long run over time for you. You need to know, for you, is this going to work? The way things are done, the way business is conducted, even. There's some churches who are very on the front line, and cutting edge of technology, but their business practices are not as great. And so you need to know if that's something that you can deal with, if that's something that's a deal breaker for you. So I think it's very important, as you both said, to do your own research and do your own interviewing. Absolutely, I think you have to do it.
Yeah, it's something you have to do, because the church is definitely doing their homework on you. So you want to know where you're possibly going, and so you can make a very informed decision on whether or not it's a great fit. Um,
Indeed.
let's talk about cultivating pastoral relationship. That's very important, especially from the beginning. Uh, the value of getting synergy created, um, with your pastor, and how to foster a meaningful relationship to where you can work together, plan worship together, plan uh, thematic stuff with sermon series and all that kind of stuff. Let's just talk a little bit about how to best facilitate a healthy relationship with your pastor. But Chris, you want to start on that one?
Yes. I think first of all, again, I think it's important to make sure you have a direct line to the pastor. Not necessarily have to talk to him every day. Great thing about Dr. Lewis, it's always a phone call away. He's not really a hands-on type of pastor per se. He sort of lets his staff sort of run things more or less, which is great. Which is great. Some pastors a little more hands-on. I hate to use the word micromanage, if you will, but they a little more hands-on management wise. Just depends on what your preferences are. But no, I think it's really important to build a rapport with them for yourself. Um, it doesn't have to be so much about spiritual things. Hey, what do you like to do? Where do you like to go? Just to get to know each other. The great thing is that me and Dr. Lewis, we have a lot of things in common. We're about the same age. Both married, both have adult children. Both have a love of sports, outside of our love for God and for God's people. And like I said, we don't talk every day, obviously, but I think it's enough. So our relationship is still evolving. It's not like and Dr. Lewis has been at the church for obviously a long time, most of his adult life, obviously, in ministry there. So me just getting there, so I'm still learning people and still learning culture, but I think it's so important that you both sides initiate building rapport with each other, not just depend on the pastor to build it, not just depend on the minister of music or worship pastor to build it on their end. I think it's a collaborative, intentional is the word I like to use, intentional effort on both parts. Because you know what you know, and you don't know what you don't know. And a lot of times what you don't know could get you in trouble. So you do the best you can to know. And it's something I've had to continue to work on for the sake of transparency on my end. But praise God, definitely praise God for where things are.
Yeah. So same question, Jamie, just but with a different twist on it. Talk about, with regard to that relationship, talk about the importance of being teachable and always having a teachable spirit and being willing to learn and also willing to share and even teach and collaborate.
Wow. I think that's huge from this perspective. When as a worship director, worship pastor, whatever word you want to use to describe what it is we do, um, you're serving. You're serving a people and serving a pastor. I think it's very, very important that you, first of all, get to know the pastor that you're serving. In relationships, that's important as well. You cannot enter into relationships assuming that the way this person is going to receive you and the way that you serve is going to be just like the last people or the last pastor that you served. It's very important to foster relationships with people, get to know them. What do they like? What do they dislike? What do they love? What do they loathe? Find those things out so that you can be the best servant that you can be. It's a mistake, even in relationships, to have a one size fits all mentality. I am often asking people that I am in relationships with um, to teach me, because you talked about being teachable. I am often asking friends, family, loved ones to teach me how to love you. And I ask that question because I know how I love. I know the way that I give love, and I know the way that I receive love. But the way that I love, everybody doesn't receive love in that way. And if I continue to try to love them the way I do, and they don't receive it that way, then my good that I was trying to do to them is not being received by them. So I am constantly asking people, hey, show me what to do. Teach me what you like. Show me what you don't like so I can love you and serve you the way that works for you. Because that's the whole point, right? And I think some of us fall in love with the way we do things and we're not thinking about the fact that, hey, that might not work for everybody. It's not a one size fits all. So with your pastor and with your church, it's very important to find out how they receive service. Sometimes you could be doing too much. Sometimes you could be literally doing too much trying to serve. And with a pastor like Pastor Martin, he'll say to me, "Hey, this is what I think. This is what I expect." And so that lets me know instantly if I do this, that's a little far over the threshold of what may be comfortable for him. He's not comfortable with certain things. He's a laid back guy. He's not one of those guys. You know him very well, Chad. And so to me, you just have to learn again how people want to be loved, how they want to be served, so that you can do it effectively and stop trying to do it one size fits all, you know?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a great insight. So while we're still discussing the pastoral relationship, let's talk about vision and the interpretation of vision. Give us some tips, especially for new ministers of music or new worship pastors, on understanding how to receive pastoral vision, interpret pastoral vision, and then carry out and bring to fruition that vision. Whether it's vision for the church, vision for worship at the church, vision for the worship arts ministry, all of those different components, because it's very layered. And that's one of the
Yes.
things that we're all expected to do, is to
Yeah.
understand how, and a lot of times what I've learned just over the years is pastors don't even always know or understand how to articulate themselves and say, this is what I want, A, B, C, D. They may be like, I want some fried chicken, you know, and it's
Mm.
like, well, you know, do you want it? How do you want it seasoned? Do you want it grilled? Do you want it fried? Do you want it from French's? You want it from Popeyes? You want it from Timmy Chan's? You know, and so it's up to us to understand how to read through those nuances and understand how to interpret things, kind of like what you were saying, Jamie, understanding how they function, how they think, how they're wired, how they're made, so you can understand how to navigate and figure out what they're thinking and wanting, and then getting it to happen. So talk to us a little bit about that. Go ahead, Jamie.
I think it's just what we just said. It's relationship. For me, I tend to be like you said, the ABCs. Spell it out for me, so that I can give you back exactly what you're asking me for. But it's not always that simple. And like you said, sometimes they don't even know how to say to you, "I want this." For example, we are now. You just talked about it, Chad. We are doing thematic ministry. Pastor has told me over the last couple of months there's specific stuff that he wants to talk about. He has sent his sermon titles for 2 months to me and said, "Hey, on this Sunday, I mean 2 months, every Sunday, this is the topic, this is the title. I don't have a title for this yet, but this is what I'm talking about." And so that gives me a great broad vision for 2 months of what I need to be music, creating music for, and not just music, but dance and mime and all of that. And so that's working for us. I report back to him and say, "Hey, listen, you this week you talked about." He's doing a series right now called Name Dropping. He's teaching about the names of God. And so we've done a few of them. We've done Jehovah Rapha, and we've done El Shaddai, and we've done Jehovah Shalom. And so all three of those weeks, we have different, the way the church is currently set, we have different ministries that are assigned to different weeks. And so my task is seeing the week that they're assigned to, taking the word for that particular week and trying to craft music, worship around what he's talking about. It's great for us because once I do it and say, "Hey, look, how did this work? How did you feel about this?" And even running those things past him. "Hey, I've got an idea for Jehovah Shalom, since we're going to be talking about God, the God of peace, the God who is our peace. What if we do this? What if this is my thinking. Hey, what do you think about that?" And he said, "Hey, man, I love it. Let's do that. Let's run with it." So kind of this, keeping this open dialogue too, about the worship services, and making sure that the things that you're seeing or you're envisioning, that they line up. Sometimes I've been guilty of trying to surprise the pastor with, "Hey, I just want to take this and do this, and I want him to see, yeah, this is what that is." But sometimes it's best to just say, "Hey, what do you think about this? This is what I'm thinking. What do you think?" I've
Yeah.
learned that over the years, and it works perfect, because sometimes they have a very detailed opinion about it, and sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're like, "Oh, yeah, go with it. It's cool. Works for me."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. It takes some time to build that trust. I can say that about my pastor. It took a little while for him to trust me in some areas, but once he built the trust,
Yes.
it's fine. But I'm with you. Don't be
Yes.
trying to do no outrageous surprises and bringing in elephants and live tigers in the service, and for Christmas and Easter, and and you haven't said anything to anybody. That does not
Right.
work out well. That
Yeah.
doesn't work out well.
Yeah.
Chris, you have any insight on that you want to share?
Oh yes, oh yes. So just to give a little insight, so Dr. Lewis, he's not necessarily a thematic preacher per se. So I sort of came from working with Dr. Riley the last few years. So he's sort of he's a little more thematic preacher, so to speak. So it was easier to sort of build music around that. But Dr. Lewis he does have a series this month he's working on. It's our theme for the year, which says, "I can be more." So, and I think the first thing in regards to being more is being open, as I said before, being open to what God has for you. So I started off the Sunday, all the music led around saying yes to God. So whether it was a hymn, whether it was praise and worship, whether it's harmonic selections, I sort of built it around there. It was a very effective service because everything was just so intentional. But at times he leans on the liturgical calendar a lot. A lot of churches obviously do, so it's always easy to go that route as well. But what works for me, because Dr. Lewis is not necessarily a music guy, so to speak, so sometimes I'll ask what he doesn't want if he doesn't know what he wants. So a lot of times you can find out information that way. What don't you like? And he has no problem, trust me, saying what he doesn't like. So I learned a lot through that. So he's pretty open, pretty much for the most part, to what he want to do. But that's always been my key question when pastors don't necessarily know what they want or not able to articulate musically what they're after. I always ask, what don't you want? And most have no problem saying, well, I definitely don't want that. Oh, I don't like that. Oh, I don't want her up there. I don't like the way you go. So tell me that. I have no problem. I follow instructions extremely well, probably almost too well. So if it don't work, I can say, well, you said that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
But no, like I say, he does a great job in regards to articulating, like I said, especially what he doesn't like. Because, everybody does God different, man. Just coming from St. Louis, they do church one way. Coming down here, they do church differently. So I think that's why it's important to ask those early on theological questions. Who is God? What is worship? What is that? What is praise? What is the corporate praise moment? What does that look like for you? I came from Central. My first got to Central about, I guess that was however long ago that was now. Praise and worship, everybody sat. I mean, literally sat. And I observed praise and worship. By the time I left, they were all standing. Because, you have a pastor who loves worship. He's the first one up, So I think it's important, again, to ask those early theological questions so you'll know how to navigate musically and creatively. So make sure it fits the vision of the house.
Yeah. Jamie, did you see what Shonda said? She said you're doing a great job at Holman in the chat.
I did. I just responded. Thank you, Shonda. I appreciate that so much.
Absolutely. We love Shonda. So in this same space, and we need to begin to wrap it up. So let me say this. If any of you who are watching have questions, please put your question in the chat. Hopefully you're watching on the Broadly Group Facebook page, because that's the chat that I'm able to look at, because I'm doing triple duty over here tonight. So if you have questions and you're on the Facebook side, if you will, please put your questions in there and we'll try to get to a couple of questions. But let me say this. I served at Good Hope Baptist Church for 13 years before I was at the Luke, and I served with Dr. Cofield. And he was highly creative. He sang, he had directed choirs in college, but he was very, very creative. And so there wasn't a whole lot of, here's an idea, figure it out. It was, let's sit down and we're going to build this thing together, and let's think through this and let's work through this together. And so that's the way that he functioned, because he was a highly creative person. And so one of the things in that process that I learned that I really want to share with everybody is that as artists, we have to sometimes back down, especially if the pastor has ideas, if the pastor has thoughts, whether you think they're great or not, it doesn't matter. You got to work through that. I mean, really, but as artists, sometimes we have to know when to stand down, yes. And still work to make it happen. Anything else in that space?
Yeah, I think you use that term, stand down. Yeah, that is crucial, because at the end of the day, the pastor is the ultimate minister of music. He is the worship leader of the house. So you may have one thing in mind, but if he has something else, guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna stand back and I'm gonna follow him as he follows God. So I think it's really important, because we could easily have our own interpretation or vision of what we think should happen, but
sure,
he's the ultimate worship leader of the house.
Sure. And we are there, as you said, to serve. Here's my last question, and then we'll see if anyone in the comments has questions. How do you guard your artistry? How do you guard your artistry? From personal experience, I can speak about how I haven't always done the best job of guarding my artistry. Because as y'all know, when we get in these full-time positions where you're doing it full time, it can be all consuming. And next thing you know, you're not practicing anymore. You're not singing. You're not writing. You're not doing a lot of the stuff that you did as an artist because you've become so consumed with the administrative side of the role. And then next thing you know, you're not doing anything creative or artistic anymore. You're just pushing paper all the time. So give us some advice on how to guard our artistry and stay healthy as artists, but yet still do a great job in full-time ministry. Jamie, you start.
Man, that's a great question, Chad. And I think that's a needed question too. The first thing that I can think of is this is gonna sound deep. It's gonna sound deep. I know it is. Keep your relationship with Jesus vibrant and flowing and moving. That we are, just as God is a multifaceted God, we are multifaceted people, and we are able to do multiple things. But like you said, we can get really bogged down with specific things because we're trying to do a specific job. I think though, my gift, particularly, I can speak personally, my gift is most creative and flowing and vibrant when my relationship with the Lord is flowing and vibrant, because that should be a dynamic relationship. It should not be old and wanting. It should be passionate and fiery. And as you spend time with him, I think he is always concerned with purpose for you, and him giving you the creativity, making you a creative, is what he designed you for. So I think that in that relationship there, I think in your moments and your times of conversation and worship personally with him, I believe that he will begin to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, what about this? What do you think about this? The songs, if you're a writer, will begin flowing in those moments because your relationship is flowing. I personally, I could not do it without God. I couldn't do it because I would be totally wiped out, like you said, with just the day to day, focusing on that. In my seek, in my personal, in my private time, the things that are happening to me in life, those things the Lord is speaking loudly about, and that creative thing is charged because I'm like, wow, that's a song. Wait a minute. Oh my God, I just learned a lesson. The Lord just taught me something. Oh my God, that might be something, So for me, just for me, it is having a passionate relationship with the Lord, and not allowing church and church work to make you stale,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but being very fiery and passionate in your relationship with Jesus. That's me.
Mm-hmm. Good stuff. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good stuff. Chris, what about you?
Let's see. I had this deep spiritual answer, but since Jamie done took us to church,
Jamie done took it. Right.
So let me come from the practical side of things. And it's a bad word for anybody in ministry, and y'all know what I'm about to say. This word called balance.
Balance. What is balance? What is that?
So balance between. So just in terms of balancing ministry and life in general. A lot of times we can get so consumed with ministry and just meeting the needs of people, we forget about ourselves. So it's always a challenge for me to try to balance my life, to make sure I'm not so consumed with church and church work and the church ministry that I don't take a break, take a breather, go work out every once in a while. Like I said, I love sports, so I take time to do that. That a lot of times gets my creative juices flowing a lot when I feel like I maybe get a little stale. But I'm a songwriter, so I find a song in everything, as the wine and song say. Everything you touch is a song. So even if I find myself sort of in a stale sort of space, generally I just have to take a break. I just have to sort of take a step back. Can't take it for long, obviously, but we'll just take a couple of days, do something different outside of just the regular rigmarole of what we do. Because a lot of times it's hard for me just to turn it off. As a matter of fact, it's impossible for me to turn it off. I'm always thinking about what's next. You know, my mind is already towards Christmas.
Listen,
you know, it's already like, what in the world are we going to do? You know,
because Easter has already happened. Easter was yesterday.
Yeah, we already have what that concept is.
Yeah.
That's gonna I have a workshop next week, so it's like it's always what's next. So but I think just a healthy balance. Make sure you take care of yourself. You know, all of those things that we can neglect because we're so busy trying to meet the needs of God's people.
Yeah, this work can consume you. That was something that's very important, what you said. So balance is very important. A vibrant relationship with God and being in communion with the Holy Spirit regularly is also very important to help freshen all of those things, like you were saying, Jamie. Rest is great. Therapy is great. Get a therapist. There's nothing wrong with a therapist. If you break your arm, you're not fixing to just pray. I mean, you can if you want to, but that arm is gonna be, you know, you're gonna go to the hospital. You're gonna go to the doctor if you get sick. And so there's nothing wrong with getting therapy. Take vacations. That's something that we also don't do very well. And I saw Lasky Smith. What's a vacation, right? I saw Lasky Smith watching. He's one of my praise team members, and I really appreciate him because he really pushes me to take a break. I don't listen very much, but it's just we can become so consumed. And what's crazy is people will actually still ask me, so what do you do? What y'all be doing at the church? Because they think we just come on Sunday morning, turn on the organ, turn on all the equipment, and we just say, put me in A flat, let's have church.
Sunday is the easiest part of our job. That's the
who you telling.
Now Monday through Saturday, pray for us. Sunday's the easy part. That's just a celebration portion of the job, you know.
Right. We had a question from the chat. Dr. Tony McNeil, who was a great friend of mine and a great friend of yours as well. He asked, what is your process for discerning the needs of your congregation separate from your worship ministry? How do you discern the needs of the actual congregation, not the worship ministry, not the pastor, not all that stuff? How do you discern what God wants to do with the congregation? You want to start with that, Chris?
Yes, I can, because I think that's an ever evolving thing. I don't think you just get to a point and just stop learning the congregation. That was one of the things I had to do when I first got there, to see what the church gravitates to. New Faith, they love hymns. No matter how you do it, they love hymns. That was one thing that was ingrained in me upon my arrival. And shortly thereafter, I found out why. So I always make sure that I give them a healthy diet of music, if you will. They love variety. So hopefully I've been able to provide more variety to sort of stretch them. Our demographic of our church, I think that's something else that's important to learn what that is, because every church is different. For us, pastor's vision is geared towards families. But we have a good, I'll say about 60% baby boomer congregation, more or less. So obviously have to meet those needs musically and theologically through music as well. So I think that's a great way just to learn the demographic of the church. And as you're teaching material, see what they gravitate to, see what they like, see what they don't like. I mean, I'm sure we've all had Sundays to where, that maybe they don't care for that one too much. you know, and there have been other times where I've done songs that I particularly don't care for. I would never tell them that, but they love them. I mean, I'm not going to say what that is because New Faith.
Right. And New Faith is looking, because somebody just said in the chat how much they love you and what a great job you're doing in New Faith.
Oh, tell them, please tell them I will pay them Sunday for that comment. No, they're great people. But yeah, I think it's important to make sure you're giving them what they need. Because you have, from a practical point of view, the tithe payers, they're paying your salary. I mean, we don't like to talk about that a lot, but that's what it boils down to. It's not so much about making them happy per se, but at the same time, I think you do have to be sensitive to what they gravitate to. That's why I think it's important, again, that you do a wide, healthy diet of music to see what they gravitate to, what they like, what they don't. Like some things I did at Central, I brought down New Faith. And some things I did at Central, they're like, I brought down here, they love it, you know. So I think it's always important weekly that you are in tune and sensitive to what the congregation is responding to and what's meeting their needs spiritually from a music and worship perspective.
Good stuff. Jamie?
I love that, Chris. I love that. I agree with most of what you said. I probably we're going to say the same thing. I think it's just important that you are listening to them, watching. And when you are programming music, see, like you said, see how it goes. Watch how it moves. Conversations with the pastor, with the deacons, just about what they have done in the past. What was it prior? What it has been, and then you can take that information and build in some of the things that you're trying to do. I like I said, I've been here a couple months now. I've tried a couple really ambitious songs for Holman Street, and they worked. They worked. I wasn't sure how it was gonna go,
Yeah.
but I had one of the deacons say to me, "I really like that song. It was a Hillsong song."
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Really?
But the way I did it, I tried to,
You
make it
dipped it in a little chocolate.
a little sauce on it.
A
A little
little,
bit.
yeah.
But it was during his name dropping series. And I believe it was about we were doing Jehovah Rapha, God who heals us. And so I did one of those songs and really engaged the congregation, and they loved it and they sang along. I taught it to them before we, because you know how it is. You all know how it is when you're introducing new material. If they don't know it, sometimes they'll sit and just and so I've learned over time to kind of engage the audience, to get them engaged. I teach it. I teach the chorus sometimes. I'll teach the vamp if it's a really catchy vamp. I'll stop at the beginning of the song and just teach the congregation and have them sing it back to me, and then we'll get into it. And so we did that, and they loved it. And I was like, "Ooh!" I just didn't really know, but I've done a couple songs, really kind of cutting edge for the church, and they love them both. So you just got to listen, and like you said, you've got to, like Chris just said, you've got to put it out and kind of see what works, and then you just kind of make decisions based on that.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You have to sometime try stuff
Yeah.
and see if it'll work. Sometime it will, sometime it won't. One thing that we have to do is be encouragers of ourselves and realize that if the people are sitting and not responding, it doesn't mean you're terrible. It doesn't mean the song is terrible. It just means they may not be receiving it. Another thing I definitely want to lift before we go is to remind us all who do this work that we are also part of making disciples. That's our call from Matthew 28.
Yes.
Make disciples. That is
Disciples.
not just the pastor's job. That's not just the Sunday school teacher's job. That is absolutely the worship pastor's responsibility, is to make
Yes.
pastors, to make disciples. And
Disciples.
so that's why it matters what we sing, because my therapist was telling me this one day. We are the ones who are putting power and strength and healing and all those things in the mouths of the people.
Yes.
We're the ones who set the diet and along with the pastor, but I'm specifically speaking around congregational singing and the songs that we do for worship and the songs that we even do for the sermonic, because the sermonic is a great opportunity to teach Bible,
Yes.
to teach
Yes.
information. But
Yes.
but even with congregational singing and worship, we are putting theology into the minds and into the
Yes.
mouths and the spirit of God's people. And so that's something that is an awesome opportunity, but it's also an awesome responsibility that we have to be very
Indeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
careful,
Yeah.
careful theologically
Yeah.
what we're saying, because we don't want to teach people lies about God just because it may be popular, just
Absolutely.
because it may be on the
Yes.
radio, because the
Chad,
radio, listen, yeah, okay, yeah. So that's all of those things really, really matter, because people's lives, we have a saying at the Luke that lives are on the line. And
Yes.
lives really are on the line. Go ahead.
Yeah, and actually, a mentor of mine put it in a great way, similar to what you just said. Literally, for those moments when we're up, you literally have people's lives in your hands.
Mhm.
People are at pivotal points in their lives and making crucial decisions about their life. Whether in some case maybe to end their life. We saw what happened at Lakewood yesterday. You know, unfortunate situation. But then you have the other extreme, someone may be making a decision to give their life to Christ, which
Facts.
the ultimate purpose while we're in worship in the Sunday morning experience. And our responsibility as it relates to the Sunday morning experience is to win souls for the kingdom and expose them to Jesus Christ, the real Jesus Christ, not the made-up nursery rhyme version that we sometimes may hear, but no, the real unadulterated word of God. And our job is to put the pastor in position to give the word of God and to extend that invitation. That should be the highlight of the worship experience.
Yeah, you so petty. That Jesus, the other Jesus. Yes, Lord. Yes, Lord. Well, I didn't see any more questions in the chat. Good evening to all of y'all. Thank y'all for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation. You guys have been great guests. Thank you for joining me today and being a part of this conversation. Hopefully someone has been helped. Hopefully somebody's been inspired. If anybody is considering a new job or is already starting a new job, hopefully you've gained some insight on something, or something will be able to bless you. I don't know if y'all can hear that siren. My apologies. My window was open and it's something going on outside. So
it's real time. It's real time.
Real time. But I want to thank you guys for being here, and thank all of you for joining us today. Again, the Broadly Group is here to meet your needs, to help churches help people worship. So whatever that looks like, with regard to helping staffing your church, your ministry, coaching, consulting, any of those kind of things, that's what we're here for. And that's what we're passionate about doing, serving the Lord in that way and helping God's people and helping to build the kingdom. So this has been another episode of The Panel. See y'all next month. We've got some great stuff planned. Looking forward to it. Happy New Year. Haven't seen you all since last year. So Happy New Year to everybody who's watching. And you all have a great remainder of your week. All right. Signing off.